Hi, I'm Alistair from Airfleet, and today we're going to be talking about how to track the increasing traffic that comes from LLMs, chatbots, whatever you want to call them. One of the better ways to track this would be via an analytics platform like Google Analytics, but you can also use these principles for Adobe and pretty much any analytics platform. Thankfully, the makers of these chatbots, these LLMs, have started to use source medium properly, so that we can assess whether someone is coming from the likes of ChatGPT or Perplexity, which is really Claude and a couple of other providers. So what I'm going to show you is a fairly simple trick or a fairly simple method for doing this. And there's two parts to this. There's the longer term provision of a custom channel group, which we'll talk about in a sec, which is not backward looking. And then there is a shorter term or instant fix using Looker Studio, although you can use any alternative to Looker Studio. And all of this revolves essentially around a regular expression, or regex. And we'll get into that in a bit more detail just now. In GA4, what you want to do, or reasonable facsimile thereof, is in the admin interface, you want to set up a channel group, a custom channel group. So a channel group, if you're not familiar, is a way for you to define buckets of visits, of visitors, according to where they came from, their acquisition channel. Now, because how exactly you define, say, something like organic social versus paid social can differ from marketing team to marketing team, particularly if you're using, a more exotic tool out there. What you can do is add another channel group. The default channel group, which is what's built into all of the reports in Google Analytics, and you have similar groupings in other analytics platforms. It's unaware and because it's uneditable, it's unaware of LLMs. It doesn't have a bucket into which it puts the likes of ChatGPT. Those would all just be under typically referral, which is fine. But if we want to be able to easily see as a bundle, as a bucket, how LLMs are doing, we need to create a custom. Now, I've done it already here in a previous iteration of this, but I'll just do it again. And we call this LLMs again. Add a description as you see fit. Then what you want to do is add the channel. And the way we define the channel is we give it a name, and then we add a condition group. In other words, how will it know which visitors, based on their on conditions, to put into this bucket? We are going to use the magic of regular expression, or regex as it's known, and we're going to do that on source. So now what we're saying by saying conditions match regex, paste this magic in, we're saying if any of these are in the domain, the source domain, or the source channel, that you need to put you need to place them into this bucket, the LLMs bucket. By default, what Google Analytics and other platforms will do is they'll put this at the bottom, so we need to reorder this. And the reason you need to reorder this is because these buckets are processed, or at least the rules for these buckets are processed top down, top to bottom. So if there's something in paid search, for example, or paid other, which would conflict with the LLM rule, possibly say referral, then if that bucket were above LLMs, then it would fall into that bucket first and not be counted under LLMs. So we reorder this to the top, and now those visits will go to the LLMs bucket. We hit apply, and we save the group, and now we have LLMs again. And now I have exceeded my channels, so I'll delete it in this case because I've already actually created it earlier. Now, the thing about this is that, unfortunately, channel definitions, channel groups and channels in general are not, you can't backfill them. Yeah, they're not backward looking. So we've now created a nice channel group for ourselves with a channel definition for LLMs, but only new data coming in from the moment you create that definition, that bucket, will be recorded. So I hear you cry, what if we need to see what's happening now and what's happened in the last few months? These channel groups are not the only way to look at this data. If you have a tool, you can actually do what I'm about to do for the record using Explore in GA4, but Explore in GA4 gives me emotional stress and I far prefer using Looker. There are other tools similar to Looker, which do similar things, and they're also very nice and powerful. But for me, the likes of Looker is really going to do a better job than GA4's own interface, but dealer's choice. So what we're looking at here is, for this period from the Airfleet side, the session source and the engaged sessions from those session sources. So how do I achieve this as opposed to all of the other stuff that's normally in here? I have made a filter, and the filter does, surprise, surprise, essentially exactly what we just did when we defined our channel in GA4. It says include session source where the regex expression matches that thing, which we will put into the description of the video or the article, whatever you happen to be looking at right now. And that's literally all you need to do. Now, we can see, therefore, that ChatGPT and Perplexity AI are the main ones sending traffic to our site. But then you can also start to do other fun stuff. For example, you can look at landing pages from those sources and mediums. It uses exactly the same filter. And we can really get a sense of very useful stuff. For example, how this ROI calculator blog article or blog page is by far our most successful piece of content over this period from ChatGPT and the like, in that it's not only the high volume relative to the rest of our to ChatGPT as a source, but that people are staying a long time. Over 5 minutes is good, and that most of the sessions are engaged, which isn't a foregone conclusion. Particularly, for example, if we look down here at the bottom, we can see that we're getting some visits from the likes of ChatGPT and Perplexity, which have a session time of 0, which is essentially they aren't true sessions. There's no engaged sessions. These are just dead clicks. And you will, like any of these platforms, get dead clicks, plenty of them. But we can see that at the top here, we've got some really high value visits from both Perplexity and ChatGPT. And to be honest, not all that surprisingly, these AI chatbots often focus on content as opposed to, say, just a homepage. Especially because you're exploring, they will have been crawling the web and looking for answers to very specific questions. And this blog post happens to answer that question well enough that they feature us. Just a note about regular expressions. Wonderful, powerful, magical when they work, but they are reliant on human beings being consistent. For example, if one of the providers changes their domain, as in fact ChatGPT did recently, you will need to update this regular expression. So it's something that needs to be checked relatively frequently. And if you modify it yourself, which I encourage you to do as new tools come out, or you want to include other things in your LLM, be sure to test it thoroughly, think through it, perhaps ask one of the tools whether it's valid, because you can easily, with regular expressions, begin to put stuff into your bucket which doesn't belong in that bucket. If we were to do, for example, this, ignore that, then anything with co, with a dot at the end, buco, would now be put into the bucket of LLMs. It's a powerful tool, but it will match implacably and reliably. So you need to be cautious when using regular expressions. Okay, hopefully that's useful.